Hi everyone, welcome to Storytime with Fairfield County Library. My name's Miss Nina and I am so excited for Storytime. Are you guys ready? Awesome. Okay, this week our theme is Christmas. So this week we are going to be reading two books that are all about Christmas. All right, our first book is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by Robert L. May, illustrated by Denver Gillen and published by Applewood Books. 'Twas the day before Christmas, and all through the hills the reindeers were playing, enjoying the spills of skating and coasting and climbing the willows, and hopscotch and leapfrog, protected by pillows. While every so often they'd stop to call names at one little deer not allowed in their games. Ha ha, look at Rudolph, his nose is a sight. It's red as a beet, twice as big, twice as bright. While Rudolph just wept, what else could he do? He knew that the things they were saying were true. Where most reindeers' noses are brownish and tiny, poor Rudolph's was red, very large and quite shiny. In daylight it dazzled, the picture shows that. At nighttime it glowed like the eyes of a cat, and putting dirt on it just made it look muddy. Oh boy, was he mad when they nicknamed him Ruddy. Although he was lonesome, he always was good, obeying his parents as good reindeer should. That's why, on this day, Rudolph almost felt playful. He hoped that from Santa, soon driving his sleigh full of presents and candy and dollies and toys for good little animals, good girls and boys, he'd get just as much, and this is what pleased him, as the happier, handsomer reindeer who teased him. So as night and a fog hid the world like a hood, he went to bed hopeful. He knew he'd been good. While way, way up north on this same foggy night, old Santa was packing his sleigh for its flight. This fog, he complained, will be hard to get through. He shook his round head, and his tummy shook too. Without any stars or a moon as our compass, this extra dark night is quite likely to swamp us. To keep from collisions, we'll have to fly slow. To keep our direction, we'll have to fly low. We'll steer by street lamps and houses tonight in order to finish before it gets late. Just think how the boys and girls' faith would be shaken if we didn't reach 'em before they awaken. Come Dasher, come Dancer, come Prancer and Vixen, come Comet, come Cupid, come Donner and Blitzen. Be quick with your suppers, get hitched in a hurry. You too will find fog a delay and a worry. And Santa was right, as he usually is. The fog was as thick as a soda's white fizz. Just not getting lost needed all Santa's skill, with street signs and numbers more difficult still. He tangled in treetops again and again, and barely missed hitting a tri-motored plane. He still made good speed with much twisting and turning, as long as the street lamps and house lights were burning. At each house first noting the people who lived there, he'd quickly selected the bright presents to give there. By midnight, however, the last light had fled, for even big people have then gone to bed. Because it might wake them, a match was denied him. Oh my, how he wished for just one star to guide him. Through dark streets and houses old Santa fared poorly. He now picked the presents more slowly, less surely. He really was worried, for what could he do if folks started waking before he was through? The air was still foggy, the night dark and drear, when Santa arrived at the home of the deer. A ledge that he tripped on while seeking a chimney gave Santa a spill and a painfully skinned knee. The room he came down in was blacker than ink. He went for a chair and then found it a sink. The first reindeer bedroom was so very black he tripped on the rug and fell flat on his back, so dark that he had to move close to the bed and squint very hard at the sleeping deer's head before he could choose the right kind of toy, a doll for a girl or a train for a boy. But all this took time, filled Santa with gloom, while slowly he groped toward the next reindeer's room. The door he'd just opened, when, to surprise, a dim but quite definite light met his eyes. The lamp wasn't burning, the glow came instead from something that lay at the head of the bed. And there lay, but wait now, what could you suppose? The glowing, you've guessed it, was Rudolph's red nose. So this room was easy. This one little light let Santa pick quickly the gifts that were right. How happy he was till he went out the door. The rest of the house was as black as before, so black that it made every step a dark mystery. And then came the greatest idea in all history. He went back to Rudolph and started to shake him, of course very gently, in order to wake him. And Rudolph could scarcely believe his own eyes. You just can imagine his joy and surprise at seeing who stood there so real and so near, while telling the tale we've already told here. Poor Santa's sad tale of distress and delay, the fog and the darkness and losing the way. The horrible fear that some children might waken before his complete Christmas trip had been taken. And you, he told Rudolph, might yet save the day. Your wonderful forehead may yet pave the way. For a wonderful triumph it actually might. Old Santa, you notice, was extra polite to Rudolph regarding his wonderful forehead. To call it a big shiny nose would sound horrid. I need you, said Santa, to help me tonight, to lead all my dear on the rest of our flight. And Rudolph broke out into such a big grin it almost connected his ears and his chin. A note for his folks, he dashed off in a hurry. I've gone to help Santa, he wrote. Do not worry. Said Santa, my sleigh I'll bring down to the lawn. You'll stick in the chimney. And flash, he was gone. So Rudolph pranced out through the snow very gay, and took his proud place at the head of the sleigh. The rest of the night, well, what could you guess? Old Santa's idea was a brilliant success, and brilliant was almost no word for the way that Rudolph directed the deer in the sleigh. In spite of the fog, they flew quickly and low, and made such a good use of the wonderful glow from Rudolph's forehead at each intersection that not even once did they lose their direction. While as for the houses and streets with a sign on 'em, they merely flew close so that Rudolph could shine on 'em. To tell who lived where, and just what to give whom, they'd fly by each window and peek in the room. Old Santa knew always which kids were good, and minded their parents and ate as they should. So Santa selected the gift that was right, while Rudolph's forehead gave just enough light. It all went so fast that before it was day, the very last present was given away. The very last stocking was filled to the top, just as the sun was preparing to pop. The sun woke the reindeer in Rudolph's hometown. They found the short message that he'd written down, then gathered outside to await his return. And were they excited, astonished to learn that Rudolph, the ugliest deer of them all, Rudolph the red-nosed, bashful, so small, the funny-faced fellow they'd always called names and practically never allowed in their games, was now to be envied by all, far and near, for no greater honor can come to a deer than riding with Santa and guiding his sleigh, the number one job on the number one day. The sleigh and its reindeer soon came into view, and Rudolph still led them as downward they flew. Oh boy, was he proud as they came to a landing, right where his handsomer playmates were standing. These bad deer, who used to do nothing but tease him, would now have done anything only to please him. They felt even sorrier when they had been bad, when Santa said, Rudolph, I never have had a deer quite so brave or so brilliant as you at fighting black fog and at guiding me through. By you, last night's journey was actually bossed. Without you, I'm certain we'd all have been lost. I hope you'll continue to keep us from grief, our future dark trips, as Commander-in-Chief. But Rudolph just blushed from his head to his toes until his whole fur was as red as his nose. The crowd first applauded, then started to screech, "Hooray for our Rudolph, and we want a speech." But Rudolph was bashful, despite being a hero, and tired. His sleep on the trip totaled 0. So that's why his speech was just very brief and not bright. Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night. And that's why wherever it's foggy and gray, it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed who guides Santa's sleigh. Be listening this Christmas, but don't make a peep, because that late at night children should be asleep. The very first sound that you'll hear on the roof, provided there's fog, will be Rudolph's small hoof. And soon after that, if you're still as a mouse, you may hear a swish as he flies around the house and gives enough light to give Santa a view of you in your room. And when they're all through, you may hear them call as they drive out of sight, "Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night." That was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Did you guys know it was a book? All right, our second book is How the Grinch Stole Christmas by Dr. Seuss, published by Random House. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now please don't ask why, no one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cage with a sour, grinchy frown at the warm lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now hanging a mistletoe wreath. "And they're hanging their stockings," he snarled with a sneer. "Tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here." Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming, "I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming." For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys, and then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise, 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 noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. The more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, "I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how?" And then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked. What a great Grinchy trick! With this coat and this hat, I look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer were scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then he took some red thread, and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, "Giddy up!" and the sleigh started down toward the homes where the Whos lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were out dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, "This is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed on the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. "These stockings," he grinned, "are the first things to go." Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present: pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn, and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox, he took the Who's feast, he took the Who pudding, he took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. "And now," grinned the Grinch, "I will stuff up the tree." And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned round fast, and he saw a small Who, little Cindy Lou who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who'd got up out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, "Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why?" But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. "Why, my sweet little tot," the fake Santa Claus lied, "there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side, so I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, then I'll bring it back here." And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for their fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1/4 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a-snooze, while he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags, and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. "3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he made with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh-pooh to the Who's," he was grinchishly humming. "They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry boo-hoo." "That's a noise," grinned the Grinch, "that I simply must hear." So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started in low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry. Very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast feast. All right, that was How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I hope you guys liked it. All right, everyone, thank you for coming to Storytime. Now, just because we're done reading does not mean we have to be done with Storytime. If you come down to the library this week, you can pick up a Storytime kit, which are these fun-filled activity kits that we made to go with the books we read today. Each kit comes with a coloring sheet, a craft, and a tasty recipe that you can make with your grown-ups. This week, our recipe is for reindeer brownies, and our craft is a reindeer hat. To get a kit, you need to come to the Fairfield County Library and look for some crates in the children's section. There should be 2 crates, so don't forget to make sure that you grabbed a kit from the right crate, or you might get something other than what I talked about. The kits for this story time are in the Group B crate. They're the blue ones. New kits come out every week whenever there's a new story time. We have them as long as supplies last. If you want to try and get a kit from last week, it never hurts to ask one of the librarians. We might still have some. Maybe ask her Miss Nina. That's me. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me for story time. Once again, my name is Miss Nina, and I hope to see you in the library this week to pick up a story time kit. It's time to say goodbye, but I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye!